Hey everybody, Questwise here, and today, per special request, we're going to dive back into some more riffs. We're going to talk some more about Atlantis and secrets of the Atlanteans, because it's awesome. That's why I had a special request from a subscriber, a couple subscribers actually, to talk more about Atlantis and adventures in Atlantis and the depth of opportunity to play in an Atlantis type campaign. And I thought, that's a great idea. There's a lot of great stories to be told in an Atlantis type setting for Rifts, the role playing game. And so I decided to sit down and dive into it a little bit more. And here's what I came up with. Hope you enjoy. So, first of all, using riffs as a riffs using Atlantis as a riffs setting is one of my all-time favorite ideas. I've been enthralled with the idea of Atlantis since I was a small boy. Really, I probably 13 or 14 when I heard reference to the great lost continent of Atlantis and began to read and began to research and began to look for those historical sources that talk about Atlantis, and they're very, very few when it comes to actual historical sources. Plato at one point records that the great continent of Atlantis lay beyond the Pillars of Hercules, and that at the demise of the gods was buried beneath the waves, never to be seen again. That, of course, spawns an entire plethora of legends and lore about the continent of Atlantis and the people that live there. And the good folks over at Palladium Books took that idea when they created their Rifts role-playing game, and early on too. The actual Atlantis book is World Book number 2, and so it took to the idea of using Atlantis as a source of inspiration and what would happen after Rift's Earth re-emerged and what would happen with Atlantis. Where had it been? Where had it gone? Where is it now? Who controls it now? What powers does it have? And so you get a whole campaign setting within the Rifts role-playing game to set adventures. And the great thing about Atlantis, using Atlantis as a campaign setting for the Rifts role-playing game, is that you're not stuck with just Atlantis. As you'll see, Atlantis is the center of what had been transdimensional travel. It had been the center of this sort of outreach between worlds and dimensions and planes. And because of that, it became a very huge area of adventure opportunities. So first and foremost, there's a super long ancient history behind Atlantis that you can use in your in a campaign using the Rifts role-playing game. There's a great shattered timeline of what had happened. And now there's a theory, if you watched my lore videos leading up to the Palladium Open House, you'll know that I have a speculation that in the Palladium Fantasy role-playing game, there's a mention of the early days of that world, and there was a group of humans living in a very sort of Edenistic, sort of, not hedonistic, Edenistic, like the Garden of Eden type of a setting. And when that all went bad, they became exiles and they left. It's my belief, and basically just within the worlds that I create for my groups and my tabletop community, that those were the early Atlanteans, that their magic had been they had been so in touch with magic and so ingrained with magic and the idea of working magic, that they were the first travelers, that they were the first ones to sort of to begin trans-dimensional travel, and that they maybe had come to ancient Earth and had settled on this island nation that they call Atlantis. And from there, of course, things go bad. They begin to build the pyramid technology, and we'll get into that, the different types of magic that they employed. But pyramid technology, in that they could use that to contact and to travel into different dimensions and different worlds. That being a two-edged sword. That being that, yes, you're reaching out to other places and other peoples, but at the same time, that's creating these wakes in the megaverse, which is drawing attention back to Earth, and there might be unsavory things that are looking to come and conquer Earth. One of those things that they encountered was the vampire intelligence, and it began to spread this wave of destruction, and became the downfall, the eventual downfall of the Atlantean culture, as it were. So there's this great sort of like shattered timeline of lots of different things, whether it be, you setting a campaign in, as a true Atlantean, playing a true Atlantean, and trying to seek out that vampire scourge and try to bring it down, or even just a supernatural scourge that has befallen Rift's Earth, to hunt that kind of stuff down. There's the idea of fighting back to reclaim Atlantis, to try to make it that once glorious empire that had once been, and fighting the Splagorthian slavers who are now sort of in control of Atlantis. There's the idea of reclaiming the power of magic itself, and using those pyramids to sort of restore order, pyramid technology and magic to restore the order of the original days and stuff. You could also tell some very far-reaching stories as well too. So if you think back on the fact, if you're using the idea that the original Atlanteans had come from Palladium fantasy, that world had transferred to Rifts, or had transferred to our ancient Earth, and had established Atlantis, and from there had been sort of scattered throughout the other dimensions. You could use the Rift's dimensional builder, I think it's called the dimensional builder, right? And to create other dimensions and start that sort of story anew. What are there other dimensions that have like their version of Atlantis? Those far-reaching travelers that have come and set up communities and civilizations and created their own sort of magical traditions, and have there been downfalls? The possibilities are endless. There really are. The idea of using a true Atlanteans and those being sort of nomadic, scattered peoples now who are above humanity. They're more powerful than humans, yet they look like humans, and so they're sort of like these pre-godlike creatures, pre-human godlike creatures, that can travel the megaverse. That's what it's called, the megaverse builder. They can travel the megaverse, and you can tell billions of stories. And that's the great thing about Rifts and about Palladium books, is that there's such a wealth of opportunities to tell stories however you want to tell them. So, little touch on how you can use the Atlantis idea to tell stories in the Rifts role-playing game. Now let's touch on magic a little bit. The Atlanteans were sort of progenitors of magic, and the sort of how they began to build the magical systems and have different magical traditions, and they're kind of ones known for sort of like codifying these different types of traditions. So first of all, they were the ones to encapsulate and use ley lines. They were the ones that realized that using the ley lines to travel from place to place, to use them to contact other dimensional things. When the ley lines meet and create a rift, using that technology and harnessing that power in order to contact other dimensions and to travel to different places. They're also the ones to start to create tattoo magic, the idea of tattooing images and shapes onto your body and using and imbuing them with magic, so that once they are evoked, they come to life and create magical effects. So the entire sort of like magical grimoire is tattooed on someone's flesh. And there's different, if you look at the secrets of the Atlanteans, there's different ways that they use those. There's like the tattoo guardian, the tattoo monster slayer. So there's lots of different ways of using those tattoos to create magical effects and for different uses and stuff as well. They're also the creators of pyramid magic. There's lots of that stuff in the Secrets of the Atlanteans. It goes into great detail about different types of pyramids and how they work. Of course, now the pyramids are scattered throughout the multiverse, or across the megaverse. And it's always been interesting to me to see, what's the connection between the pyramids in Egypt and the pyramids in South America and the pyramids in the Middle East and stuff. Why are those how are those connected, and why are they very similar through very vastly different cultures? And Palladium uses that idea of Atlantis as being that sort of centenary figure, that they were the ones that sort of like began to teach others how to use this pyramid technology and magic to seek out the megaverse. So it'd be interesting to use that sort of magic and the idea of the technology throughout creating your own sort of different dimensional spaces, and maybe have a pyramids there. It's that idea of sort of the Stargate. And now, if you know me very well, I love the movie Stargate. The movie, it's one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time. Did not like the TV shows. That's my own personal opinion. I know there are tons of people out there who loved SG-1, who loved Stargate Atlantis, all that stuff. I never enjoyed the shows, but the movie is one of my all-time favorites. And that scene where they actually pass through the Stargate for the first time, and they're in that sort of desert sand world, and they walk down that ramp and turn around and realize that there's a giant pyramid behind them. And that's that shocking moment of like, wait, we've just traveled across the galaxy to a different world, and yet there's a very similar structure on this world as there is on Earth. Again, that's the whole idea of the Atlantis capturing in the Rift's role-playing game, is that you can do that. You can take that pyramid technology and place it in some other dimension, some other universe, and run games there. You can do it very, very, very well using the Megaverse Builder and a ton of other Rift books to do this kind of stories if you want to leave Earth and tell those sort of stories. There's also the Sunaj shadow magic, and I'll get back to that in just a little bit because I want to talk a little bit more about the Sunaj as well. There's crystal magic, was the using gemstones to create magical effects and to encapsulate them into some sort of gemstone type creation, and that it would replicate that certain attempt, a spell-like ability over and over again, whether it be to create a magic weapon or to cast a spell or to create a dimensional fortress. It's all kind of encapsulated into crystal magic, which is a very cool idea. A lot of the Atlanteans feel that that's sort of an artifact from their past as well too, a magic that has sort of lost its hold, lost its sort of feel, and so to find an artifact, a crystal artifact like that, is like an heirloom to the Atlanteans themselves. And there's stone magic, the ability that you can control the earth itself and use the earth, magic of the earth, to create special abilities and effects by everything from raining down rocks on your enemies to building fortresses out of stone from the ground itself. Very cool. Now, the Sunaj. What are the Sunaj? The Sunaj are the sort of like secret society that had been birthed within the Atlantis culture. Now, the Atlanteans sort of they divided themselves into different houses. And this is something you see through a lot of different fiction. It happens in like Dune and Game of Thrones and different like noble houses that people are sort of born into. And out of one of them, the Sunaj was born. It's sort of almost an Illuminati type structure. Very secret society, and these sort of slayers and assassins and hired killers / spies come from this as well too. So Sunaj are interesting. It would make a cool either a backdrop for a campaign where you're trying to root out a Sunaj sort of terrorist cell, or playing as a Sunaj themselves will be interesting as well too. Very mysterious, very hidden society in that they it talks about how they never show their face and no one's ever seen the face of a Sunaj, that they wear these sort of demonic masks and black robes. And so it'd be interesting on both sides to either run a campaign fighting against the Sunaj, who have their own sort of magic in the shadow magic and their own realm, drawing from the shadow dimension, to have these special abilities to hide themselves, to create shadows, to create creatures out of shadow, to draw creatures from the shadow realm into to the present world and use them to fight against whatever it is. Sunaj are interesting. When you read about them, outwardly they're kind of seen as a very evil organization, domineering and full of assassins and murderers and spies. But I think it's kind of one of those things that's sort of like playing the coalition. If you play it from the other side of the coin, what is it to be a Sunaj and looking out at the world of rifts? You know what I mean? They tend to be mercenaries and stuff as well too, hiring on to different places. So sometimes it's kind of fun in the Rift role-playing game to play the bad guy, to play the other side of the coin, and where does morality lie and those kind of things? Because, to be honest with you, the best way to create a villain is to have the villain think that what he's doing is right. Have that be that his main motivation of, like, if you look at the Emperor in Rift's role-playing game, Emperor of the Coalition, what he thinks he's doing is right, to restore humanity, to restore order to Earth, and to drive away magic users and dimensional beings and demons and stuff. His motivations seem to be true, but his sort of tactics of doing so by slaughtering millions of things, creatures and peoples and stuff, tend to be a little bit harsh, right? They tend to be evil. Flat out, they tend to be evil. So it'd be interesting to do the same thing with a Sunaj and sort of play it from that angle as well too. You're actually playing a character who is a Sunaj agent, and looking out from that perspective, and playing it from that side of the coin. So Atlantis, I can't say enough. There's it's, if you want to start a campaign in Rift's role-playing game and you don't know where to start, Atlantis is a great place to birth adventures. It's a great place to start great role-playing ideas. So check it out if you haven't checked out. I would highly recommend getting the Rift's World, or Atlantis World Book number 2 for Rifts, and as a companion to that, Secrets of the Atlanteans. Although both of them stand pretty well on their own. So. If you can get those, you can find them at friendly local game stores. If you have one near you that carries Palladium or doesn't carry Palladium, talk to them. Say, hey, carry Palladium products. They're really, really cool. If you don't have a friendly local game store near you like I do, over at the TC War Room, TC Paintball here in Traverse City, Michigan, find one that will support you long distance. So until next time, I'm Questwise, and we're out.